At 94, Clint Eastwood is finally breaking his silence about one of Hollywood's most iconic and mysterious friendships, his bond with Gene Hackman. After decades of keeping things under wraps, Clint's revealing words will leave you speechless. What has he been hiding? From untold stories on set to the real reason they drifted apart, get ready for a revelation that might just shock you. Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman's paths first crossed in 1971 during the making of The Beguiled, a Southern Gothic drama set during the Civil War. This was the first time they would work together on screen, but the tension between them began long before the cameras even started rolling. Eastwood portrayed John McBurney, a Union soldier injured and taken in by a group of Southern women at a boarding school. Though their roles didn't share much screen time, Hackman had a lesser part as a soldier as well. Still, behind the scenes, things were already becoming convoluted. Eastwood and Hackman were well known for their strong will and personal opinions regarding performance. Former TV cowboy Eastwood performed the tough guy with little words, using his experience. Often depending on his tough appearance and stoic attitude to portray feeling, he appreciated keeping things straightforward. Conversely, Hackman was well known for giving his parts great intensity and emotional charge. He loved delving deeply into the psychology of his characters and frequently layered and complex his presentations. The two actors experienced some conflict over these variations in performing methods. Eastwood, used to doing things his way, didn't always get Hackman's more deliberate and sophisticated acting style. Then Hackman thought Eastwood's style was too basic and underdeveloped. Though they had a difficult beginning, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman both fought hard to ascend Hollywood. Growing up in California, Eastwood traveled a lot with his family. He was interested in music as a teen and then started acting. He didn't start drawing attention, though, until he landed the part of Rowdy Yates on Rawhide. Years of performing the gruff, subdued cowboy provided him a strong basis in acting. Conversely, Gene Hackman hailed from a modest background. Born in San Bernardino, California, he was raised in a dysfunctional house. Eastwood's path to glory began later than Hackman's. Before choosing acting, he worked odd jobs, including clerk and messenger, for years. After training at the famous Pasadena Playhouse, Hackman finally earned little roles in movies. His major break came when he was cast in The French Connection, a film that virtually overnight made him a star. He became well known for portraying characters with great depth, since his realistic, gritty approach was appropriate for demanding roles. Eastwood was the quiet sort always. He needed little to convey his point of view. His major break in Rawhide had shown him that a competent actor does not have to oversell a part. Like the well-known Dirty Harry, his characters were renowned for their grim, gruff, emotionally detached attitude. This was Clint's approach: keep it quiet, keep it cool, and let the action speak for itself. By contrast, Hackman was the exact reverse. Creating people with great depth was where Hackman excelled. He thought of every moment and into the psychology of the person he was portraying. Often the person who would delve deeply into the emotional aspect of a performance, he ensured that every movement, every phrase sprang from a real feeling. This means he wasn't always the silent, gloomy sort Eastwood was. Hackman was really loud, forceful, and emotional instead. Their dynamic on set suffered from this conflict in styles. Often using a more subdued style, Eastwood would follow the script and let the images speak for themselves. But Hackman would advocate additional emotional depth, questioning the motivations of the characters and giving the part more personal vitality. Their differing approaches occasionally caused some conflict during the Beguiled filming. Their working relationship revealed this conflict since it was difficult for them to establish common ground. Making The Beguiled involved two strong personalities butting heads as much as it did filming a movie. Eastwood, who was just starting to establish his reputation as a Hollywood leading man, and Hackman, who was still adjusting to the business, did not always see eye to eye. Although their different acting styles caused some arguments, it also signaled the start of a long-term and fascinating Hollywood romance. Though they disagreed, Eastwood and Hackman valued one another's skills. Though they didn't always agree, they couldn't deny each other's capacity to add something unique to their professions. They were both known for their commitment to their trade. Though it wasn't easy, working on The Beguiled gave them an opportunity to improve in their trade and learn from one another. But while their on-screen rivalry and differing acting styles defined their early encounters, their careers would soon take very different paths, shaped by their personal ambitions and approaches to fame. Eastwood's and Hackman's careers began to veer apart as they soared. Eastwood was not only driven in acting now. He aimed to oversee the movies he worked on more personally. He started directing and producing movies in the late 1970s. He first directed Play Misty for Me, soon following Dirty Harry. This signaled the start of Eastwood's journey from merely. That keeps every word intact while making it much easier to read. Let me know if you like any further refinements. A leading actor to a revered director, Eastwood kept expanding in the business, assuming tasks that tested him, but he also began supervising some of his own initiatives. Eastwood was more than simply an actor by the 1980s. He was a director creating films including Gran Torino, The Outlaw Josie Wales, and Unforgiven. These movies let him work with more complicated characters and larger ideas and demonstrated his behind-the-scenes ability. Eastwood would go on to direct and create scores of movies, garnering praise from critics for his work. Having won Academy Awards for movies like Million Dollar Baby and Unforgiven, he was no more simply the rugged cop or cowboy. He was among Hollywood's most revered directors. Hackman stayed concentrated on acting while Eastwood was spreading out into directing. He kept playing parts in big movies as The Conversation and Hoosiers, which brought him more nominations and accolades. Playing a wide spectrum of personalities, from a harsh, cynical officer to the emotional coach, Hackman was glad to be front of camera. Eastwood and Hackman managed glory in rather different ways as their careers shot forward. Eastwood was a private person always. He kept his personal life off the public view and avoided the Hollywood spotlight. This could have been one of the factors allowing him to maintain a career for such a lengthy period. Eastwood was not one to play the fame game. He preferred low-key settings. He would like to concentrate on his family life and let his career speak for itself. Conversely, Hackman did not hesitate to take front stage, but he did not get caught and snared in it either. Unlike Eastwood, he was noted for being a little more lively and vocal. Though he never let his love of performing take front stage, Hackman appreciated the notoriety and accompanying benefits. Always choosing jobs that intrigued him rather than following the huge payday, he kept grounded and concentrated on his trade. While Eastwood was getting attention for his films and later for his directing, Hackman was becoming more and more respected for his ability to play complex, multidimensional characters. Hackman had a bit of an underdog feel to him compared to Eastwood's movie star status. They handled fame differently, but both enjoyed long, successful careers. Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman were both huge stars in Hollywood, but when it came to working together, things weren't always smooth sailing. Even though they had mutual respect for each other as actors, their professional relationship was marked by moments of tension and a clash of personalities. The film Unforgiven is one of their most famous collaborations, but behind the scenes, there were plenty of moments that revealed the true complexity of their bond. Unforgiven was a huge film that brought Clint Eastwood into the director's chair once again. Eastwood, who was already an established actor and filmmaker, decided to tackle a Western, but with a twist. This wasn't just a typical cowboy movie. It was a gritty, dark, and realistic take on the Wild West. Eastwood not only starred in the film, but also directed it. The story was about a retired outlaw, William Money, played by Eastwood, who was called back into action to take on a dangerous mission. Gene Hackman played the corrupt sheriff, Little Bill Daggett, a character who embodies both authority and cruelty. As you can imagine, this movie was full of heavy, serious performances. Eastwood and Hackman's characters were on opposite sides of the law, which made their on-screen dynamic electric. Their characters were tough, ruthless, and, at times, deeply flawed. Watching them act together was like watching two forces of nature collide. But that was just the surface. Off camera, things were a bit more complicated. Though they approached things in somewhat different ways, Eastwood and Hackman were both renowned for their strong will and great dedication to their work. Ever the professional, Eastwood spoke few words. He wanted things straightforward and disliked obsessing over his performances. He thought the action and feelings would speak for themselves. Conversely, Hackman was more methodically exact. He enjoyed delving thoroughly into his characters, knowing their backstories and motives. Especially when he disagreed with something, he was also somewhat more vocal. Often, this disparity in approach caused conflict on set. Eastwood was renowned for his reserved, quiet demeanor. Hackman was more expressive and unreservedly expressed his ideas. This resulted in some conflicts on the Unforgiven filming site. Later on, Hackman said he didn't always agree with Eastwood on how to handle particular sequences, particularly with regard to the motives of their characters. Eastwood was all about preserving things natural and grounded, whereas Hackman aimed to challenge limits and delve deeper into his own persona. Eastwood and Hackman had great professional regard, even if their working approaches differed. Having both earned their place at the top and understood what it needed to succeed in Hollywood, Eastwood was already well known as a big action star and director, and Hackman had taken home Academy Awards for his riveting performances. They were both really at their best on Unforgiven. Still, their different personalities generated an undertone of conflict, even if they valued each other's talents. Sometimes Eastwood found Hackman's more passionate, forceful performance to be inappropriate, while Hackman often wanted to investigate every element of a scene, sometimes pushing for more. Eastwood was used to remaining in control and keeping things tight. Eastwood was renowned for his extreme protection of his directing vision, hence, any departure from that would cause irritation. One narrative from the Unforgiven set illustrates how convoluted things became between Eastwood and Hackman. Hackman was supposed to be delivering a line of dialogue in a very exact manner during a particularly dramatic moment. But always seeking to give his character more complexity, Hackman began improvising, therefore altering the tone of the action. Ever the perfectionist, Eastwood felt this modification unacceptable and stopped the take right away. He gently but insistently advised Hackman that the passage should be delivered exactly as written. Used to more creative flexibility, Hackman found this to be unacceptable. The conflict had to do with their somewhat diverse points of view, as much as with action decisions. Eastwood had always been a man who believed in hard effort, discipline, and doing things his way. Both on and off set, he was a conservative thinker who favored simplicity. By contrast, Hackman was more receptive to fresh ideas and change. Often shown in his acting, he was more liberal in his thoughts and appreciated investigating the complexity of life. The age difference between Eastwood and Hackman added still another element causing pressure between them. Eastwood was in his early 60s, and Hackman was in his late 50s by the time they collaborated on Unforgiven. Although their experiences differed, which added to the suspense even if their distance seemed small, Eastwood had been in the profession for decades and had already established himself as a director. Hackman was more concerned with honing his acting technique. Both of them were at different phases in their careers, hence their interaction on set changed depending on their point of view. Eastwood was in command. Hackman had always been one to challenge limits and take calculated chances. Their different views on their positions in the sector produced a tense dynamic. Sometimes Eastwood's cool-headed, understated style ran against Hackman's emotional intensity, testing their professional respect. With two powerhouse actors unwilling to back down, the tension between them was inevitable, but would it push them to greater heights or drive them further apart? After decades of working together and separately in Hollywood, Clint Eastwood and Gene Hackman took very different paths in the later years of their careers. Their once close collaboration seemed to fade into silence, with no public acknowledgement of each other for many years. This period marked the cooling of their relationship and, in Hackman's case, a complete retreat from the public eye. But the reasons behind their silence and separation were far from simple. They were shaped by both personal and professional changes that each actor experienced in their own way. Gene Hackman's decision to leave Hollywood shocked many fans. After decades of successful movies, including The French Connection, The Conversation, and Unforgiven, Hackman decided to step away from the industry. Hackman was in his 70s by the early 2000s, and his choice was to withdraw from the celebrity and pressure that accompanied it rather than from his job. Hackman did not make a grand farewell or a huge announcement about his leaving. Rather, he progressed subtly, concentrating on his personal life and finding calm apart from the limelight. Many admirers questioned what became of the actor who had been among Hollywood's most passionate and revered performers. Some conjecture that Hackman was simply bored with the business, since celebrity usually meant sacrificing privacy. Others believed he was dissatisfied with the kinds of roles that aging brought about. Either way, Hackman left Hollywood in an enigmatic manner that created a vacuum in the business. Hollywood seemed to lose one of its most interesting and erratic stars when Hackman vanished. Clint Eastwood's career kept soaring as Hackman disappeared from public view. Eastwood kept producing, directing, and writing in addition to his acting. He became one of the most esteemed personalities in Hollywood. Eastwood embraced his position as a filmmaker, assuming increasingly ambitious films such as $1 Million Baby, Gran Torino, and American Sniper, unlike Hackman, who had left the business. Eastwood gained recognition not only for his tough guy performances, but also for his keen camera work since his movies kept winning accolades. Long after Hackman had gone silent, his career had evolved to become even more dominant, and he remained a major name in Hollywood. Eastwood must have felt the loss of his old buddy, even as he savored this continuous success. The retirement of Hackman served as a sobering reminder of how fast Hollywood may move on from someone, even someone with his talent. Eastwood's career prospered, but his personal thoughts from interviews revealed that the years of silence between him and Hackman were not always easy to swallow. Eastwood and Hackman's relationship looked to grow colder at this period. For years, the two did not attend any public events together. It was more about how their lives had gone separate routes than about whether they were rivals or whether anything significant had happened between them. Once conflicting on set, their egos seemed to drift further apart as Eastwood concentrated on directing and Hackman disappeared from the scene. Instead of a public conflict or major falling out, each actor's own path naturally produced this outcome. Eastwood was frequently questioned about his prior projects, particularly with Hackman, in interviews, but he hardly ever provided any thoughtful analysis. Years passed when both performers seemed happy to let the past remain in the past. This lack of public recognition generated questions about their relationship. Were they still friends, or did the tension linger? For years, the truth remained a mystery as both actors focused on their own careers, leaving fans to wonder what really happened between them. Stages of his career, he began to reflect more on his past, particularly on his relationships with other actors. In his interviews, Eastwood started to open up about Hackman and their time working together. He admitted that despite the differences in their personalities, he always respected Hackman's acting ability. Their relationship, while often strained, was marked by a deep, unspoken understanding of each other's craft. Eastwood was careful to say that Hackman's approach to acting was different from his own, but that didn't make it less valuable. Eastwood also acknowledged that their collaboration on Unforgiven was one of the highlights of his career. Even though their working relationship had its challenges, there was no denying the magic they created together on screen. Eastwood discussed how Hackman gave his part as the villain, Little Bill, something else. Eastwood realized that Hackman's dedication to his character improved the movie, and his portrayal was rich and sophisticated. Looking back, Eastwood seemed to understand that Hackman had been a vital component of some of the most pivotal events in his career, not only a co-worker. Eastwood also talked about his regrets too. After they stopped working together, he wished he had tried harder to keep in touch with Hackman. The years of quiet between them let Eastwood realize that, despite their professional respect, they hadn't really spent time together as friends. He voiced some irritation at their various paths and questioned whether things may have been different if they had worked more to preserve their relationship. Eastwood and Hackman's relationship looked to grow colder at this period. For years, the two did not attend any public events together. It was more about how their lives had gone separate routes than about whether they were rivals or whether anything significant had happened between them. Once conflicting on set, their egos seemed to drift further apart as Eastwood concentrated on directing and Hackman disappeared from the scene. Instead of a public conflict or major falling out, each actor's own path naturally produced this outcome. Eastwood was frequently questioned about his prior projects, particularly with Hackman, in interviews, but he hardly ever provided any thoughtful analysis. Years passed when both performers seemed happy to let the past remain in the past. This lack of public recognition generated questions about their relationship. Were they still friends, or did the tension linger? For years, the truth remained a mystery as both actors focused on their own careers, leaving fans to wonder what really happened between them. Stages of his career, he began to reflect more on his past, particularly on his relationships with other actors. In his interviews, Eastwood started to open up about Hackman and their time working together. He admitted that despite the differences in their personalities, he always respected Hackman's acting ability. Their relationship, while often strained, was marked by a deep, unspoken understanding of each other's craft. Eastwood was careful to say that Hackman's approach to acting was different from his own, but that didn't make it less valuable. Eastwood also acknowledged that their collaboration on Unforgiven was one of the highlights of his career. Even though their working relationship had its challenges, there was no denying the magic they created together on screen. Eastwood discussed how Hackman gave his part as the villain, Little Bill, something else. Eastwood realized that Hackman's dedication to his character improved the movie, and his portrayal was rich and sophisticated. Looking back, Eastwood seemed to understand that Hackman had been a vital component of some of the most pivotal events in his career, not only a co-worker. Eastwood also talked about his regrets too. After they stopped working together, he wished he had tried harder to keep in touch with Hackman. The years of quiet between them let Eastwood realize that, despite their professional respect, they hadn't really spent time together as friends. He voiced some irritation at their various paths and questioned whether things may have been different if they had worked more to preserve their relationship. Eastwood also considered his own legacy in his comments after Hackman left Hollywood. The fact that Hackman withdrew from the limelight served as a sobering reminder that, no matter how successful you are, popularity and accolades are not assured to last always. Eastwood's protracted career was evidence of his capacity for adaptation and reinventions, but the peaceful death of Hackman served as a sobering warning that no one would have the same destiny. Though it left a hole in Hollywood, Eastwood seemed to value Hackman's choice to go on his own terms. Hollywood suffered a great void when Gene Hackman retired, not only because of his acting ability, but also his distinctive approach to roles, which makes his absence much regretted. Even if each character was morally complicated or even wicked, Hackman had a way of making everyone feel real. Never one to shy away from the demanding roles, he was one of the most revered performers of his day because of his depth and realism. Hackman's absence just emphasized how unique Eastwood's performances had been while his career kept flourishing. Though many missed his performances, Hackman's retirement seemed to be a reflection of his wish to live life outside of the Hollywood limelight, and it was commendable that he chose to distance himself when he was still at the height of performance. As Clint Eastwood opens up about his longtime friend and co-star Gene Hackman, it's clear their bond is something truly special. For more incredible stories like this, don't forget to subscribe, and hit the